Okay, let's start this show. Today's topics are the use of men and boys in experiments, medical experiments, and also male privilege if we have time later. So, M. Painter, you wanted to start?
It was actually a video about male privilege. So if you want to do that 1 second, I'll bring that up later.
All right, sure, why not? Okay, then.
What's this article you've got up on the site then? Unfortunately, my work has been absolutely mental, so I've not had time to look.
Okay, well, basically, what's going on is, what's been going on for a long time is men and boys are used in medical experiments and experiments generally and treated as disposable lab rats. What we have an article, what the article is about basically is a history of that. It starts with the vaccination, the first vaccination experiment, which was literally Edward, I can't remember his name, Edward Jenner, I think. He cuts open the arm of this little boy who's his gardener's son and infects it with cowpox. And then he waits for the cowpox to pass and he infects the boy with smallpox the same way. Now, history seems to gloss over this a little bit, but this was a man in a position of huge privilege using a little boy who had absolutely no say in this from a family which relied on this man for money and for their livelihood, and he took advantage of this and he used the boy in his experiment. And make no bones about this, smallpox is a lethal disease, and it could very well have killed this little boy. He was like 8 or 9 at the time. And there's paintings of it now, and so on. It's been romanticized to an extent, and that extent is the extent that it's actually talked about at all, which it isn't really. You probably didn't hear about this in school. You probably just heard that he was the father of vaccines, and then they moved swiftly on to Louis Pasteur, who also did some good stuff. But actually, I forgot to check if Louis Pasteur did any experiments on young boys or men. But the general gist of it is they use this boy as a lab rat, and that's a very, very common feature of history. One of the things you start to realize delving through this history is that literally every experiment seems to have been conducted on either men or boys, and usually they start with boys. For example, the first blood transfusion experiment ever was a 15-year-old boy who they drained nearly dry of blood. And then they're like, oh, we've suspiciously got this blood transfusion device. We better top him up using this sheep. And so they get the boy and they give him some blood from the sheep. Or at least that's how the story goes. It's really hard to tell which way the blood flowed. They might have actually bled him even more. But even though animal blood is actually poisonous to humans if you inject it into them, there wasn't enough sheep's blood transferred to him to actually kill him. So he actually survived, although I don't think it would be very comfortable. And then moving on from him, some fairly vulnerable people were used in experiments, as well as some fairly posh people. But like the third or fourth person to get one of these transfusions died. And eventually, and I'm pretty sure that everyone agrees this is a good idea, they banned the transfusions and, like in general, all of these transfusion experiments. And that ban continued until they actually managed to make them safe, where they probably tried them again on men who are probably barely old enough to drink in the UK. So, like a very young sort of men probably, which is generally how this happens, or prisoners. Moving on from there, we have the infamous, syphilis experiments, where they told black men they were treating them for syphilis, but what they really wanted to do was spend 40 years watching black men die from syphilis. And little people don't really know very much about this, but the experiment was repeated on unwilling prison inmates, and they have, they were infected deliberately with syphilis. Of course, they were black as well. It's always black men, are the preferred, the most disposable male they can get. And I won't keep on with this. Talking about this because I do want people to read the article, but let me just say that it gets worse from there. So yes, it's hard to say if it peaks there or if it gets worse, but I generally think that it gets worse. But and there's a lot of stuff about this happening in the modern era, and about how feminists are now actually they're actually going to do something which helps us, which is get women included in experiments, although they're doing it because women are getting side effects from pills and things that are tested exclusively on men and on male rats, for that matter. So it's a whole Pandora's box of crazy stuff, and I honestly only gave the Cliff Notes version in the article. The actual full version could be a couple of books worth of stuff, because there's absolutely crazy amounts of just the most ethically unhinged stuff that's gone on throughout history, and most of it's been done to men and boys. Any thoughts on?
I was just going to say it's a bit of a catch-22 situation when you stop and think about it, because all of these diseases and stuff that they're trying to cure and what have you, we need to find the cure. So you need to do experiments, but it's inhuman to be doing experiments on live people. But then you've also got organisations like PETA which don't want you using live animals. So, to a certain degree, it's a bit like, say, the Second World War, where we saw massive technological advancement, but in order for that to happen, billions of people had to die.
Well, there is an argument that I do go through this entire argument about needing to use people to test drugs in the article, but I do mention that it's just very interesting that the specific go-to kind of defines who we care about least. So it's very much a case of, okay, who do we care about least? Let's experiment on them. And the people we care about least tend to be vulnerable young men, particularly vulnerable young men of races that are not our own. So Guatemalan men, black men in Africa, that sort of thing. And also in the army as well. There's a lot of stuff to do with that in the army, and I don't want to spoil the article too much because I do want people to read it and spent a lot of time researching it. So, uh, do you have any information on this? Have you ever heard about it at school?
Not that I can remember. Obviously, bear in mind it's what 22 years since I was at school, so I filled my head up with other information since then.
Fair enough. I mean, it's not something I remember being taught in school. I do remember Louis Pasteur and Edward. Is it Edward? No, I don't think it's Edward. It might be. I think it's Edward something. I'm never good with names, but like they are mentioned, and I think the boy might have actually been touched upon at some point. Maybe it does feel familiar to me that he used his gardener's son, but I don't think it was really like they didn't really make a thing about it. They didn't really explain that like the history of medicine is basically people experimenting on young boys and men. Which would you? Sorry.
I was just going to say we've even seen it popularized in Hollywood, in cinema. If you think about it, the original Captain America film was about a young soldier who was deemed unfit to serve, being given some kind of drugs to help him bulk up and what have
you. Yeah, that's correct. He was actually a scientific experiment, so people kind of do know about this in a subconscious kind of way, and I actually think quite a lot of Marvel and even DC superheroes and villains are like the subject of experiments and things like that, and the entire reason they have these weird powers, but at the same time the entire reason they're like insane or like they're angry is that they've been experimented on and twisted. And Deadpool's an example of this. In the Deadpool film, he was the subject of an experiment. And let's see, are there any others? Well, I can't think of any off the top of my head, but like definitely Deadpool.
That was another one.
Huh? Oh, the Hulk. It does depend on which version of the story you're reading with the Hulk, because in some versions it's just an accident during an experiment, but in others he is being experimented on. I think. No, wait, am I remembering that wrong?
Spider-Man.
Yeah. The Lizard Man. Well, I think Spider-Man is an accident in basically all of his incarnations. I am talking about deliberate experimentation, or not experiments going awry. Like Lizard Man experiments on himself, but or the Lizard, I'm not sure what his name is. But I think that's different because he was doing it to himself. But like when we're talking about like boys and men being deliberately used as lab rats, yeah, Deadpool and Captain America are definitely two. Probably should have mentioned those in the article, but then again, it was already pretty long by the time I started cutting it down and stuff and shaping it up, so I didn't mention that bit. Well, I didn't want to add any more stuff, so yeah. Also, I didn't think of it. Okay, yeah. Do you want to move on to the male privilege part, because I don't want to spoil too much of the article, but I do find it quite interesting that they basically drained this boy of blood and then refilled him with a sheep's blood, and you don't really hear about that in like history class. Like you might
horrific.
hear. Yeah, it's very, very horrific. It's I should imagine he probably had some lasting damage from that.
I'm surprised he didn't die when they drained him of blood, to be honest with you.
Yeah, me too, to be honest. I mean, them saying he survived doesn't necessarily mean he survived in perfect health. Without actually being able to look at him afterwards and before, it would be very difficult to. Yeah, but they also used I think they used a mentally handicapped man, but I lost the source for that, so I couldn't add that to the article. The way they transferred blood was pretty nasty as well, because they didn't have needles as such. They had big tubes, and I'm not sure what they were made of, but I'm guessing wood with metal ends.
Yeah.
Since this was 1700s. I mean, it could have had a glass. To be honest, it might have been glass in the middle. It's really, really hard to tell just from the drawings. I wasn't able to find any information about it. So if somebody knows, please let me know and I'll add it to the article. But otherwise, can't really say. Yeah. But I think this is a good thing to talk about male privilege through, because I've seen so many. Like I've just retweeted the UN Woman, and if you look through the replies to that tweet, there are just so many that think men are just like this privileged class of people, and they've got something that women don't, and like they're any success that men have must be from sexism or something like that. In actual fact, it's the other way around.
Yeah, I'm assuming you have seen Eccentric Hat's video on YouTube about male privilege.
No, I haven't. Well, I might have ages ago. I'm not sure.
Yeah, it's quite an old video actually. But Hat took the word privilege and then used that to discuss different men's issues. So I think P was for parental rights, paternal rights, things like that. And then you have interviews and bits of other YouTube videos people have made. And then he's cut them in so that you got all these different opinions and things. And it's an absolutely superb video. So anyone's never seen it, go and look it up. It's absolutely fantastic. And the whole narrative around male privilege is complete and utter nonsense.
If you could link to it, that would be very good. I don't think I've seen it.
Give me an hour and 10 minutes and I'll be able.
Yeah, sure. Just shove it in the chat. I'll have a look at it later. And that is kind of the classic way of us dealing with the male privilege narrative, is just to bring up stats and debunk it with by talking about how unprivileged men actually are, and how women are given advantages that men don't have. And I do find it quite interesting that all the advantages that women get are often played off as evidence that they have disadvantages that are being compensated for. It is pretty interesting. Have you ever encountered anyone in real life who goes on about this? Because having been to university, I've met a couple, but
most of the people I've dealt with obviously been online through Twitter or what have you. So I've only ever come across a couple of feminists in the real world. And one of them spat at someone when we were doing the March for International Men's Day a couple of years ago.
They spat on you?
they spat at the people marching as we went past.
Oh, I see.
A friend of Richard's on here, and somebody I met that day was actually a young lady who was a former radical feminist, believe it or not.
Mm.
And she was the one who said, "Oh, we've just been spat at," and the whole narrative around men and this privilege idea really does lead people to behave abysmally.
Yeah. Interesting that they spat on you when men spitting on women would not be tolerated. Not by anyone, really.
Absolutely not. And it was a woman that did it. And I tried to confront her. I said, "Why are you spitting at us?" And she just glared at me. Really angry, nasty, vicious glare.
Yeah. No empathy.
No, absolutely none. Absolutely none.
Be interesting to see what her thought process is, if she thinks we're attacking women or she thinks we're undermining her privilege, basically. It's probably from the first point, because people tend to view themselves as heroes in their own story, even if they're the villains. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I mean, the most people tend to think of themselves as anti-heroes.
I think she saw it as us attacking women, but also undermining feminism. And I mean, we all know you can't be doing that now, can you? That's just a crime against humanity.
Yeah.
And my friend and I are going to be doing a chat tomorrow on Stereo, and we're going to go into this, or not into this a little bit, but we're going to have a go at feminism a little bit. And a certain MP by the name of Jess.
Yes. Jess, Jess Phillips.
Yes. Have you seen her thing on, what's it called? Parental alienation?
I don't think I've seen the specific one of her laughing at parental alienation, but I should imagine that she made some very nasty comments about it, because that's her general style. To be honest, I don't think I need to see it. I think I can imagine the entire thing.
I'll try and find the screen caps and I'll link them later. But yeah, we're going to be able to go about her. But that just speaks to, if female privilege, but certainly feminist privilege, that they can go around doing that and people will pay attention to them.
Mm. Well, it's like the feminists say, the removal of privileges can feel an awful lot like oppression to the privileged. But it's not like we're even really asking for the removal of privilege. We're just asking for fairness. It just so happens that their privilege is at the expense of men. And so by removing the expense of men part, you remove the privilege. And they end up feeling very much worse off. It's like those funny articles that we saw before of women outraged that they were on the man's side of a divorce. They lost custody and they had to pay child support. And suddenly it was very, very unfair.
Yeah, there was all that stuff kicking off about Adele having to pay her ex-husband alimony.
Yeah, I seem to remember that. What was that one? That wasn't the one where the very, very rich lady was paying alimony to her husband, and she was a musician or something, and he was getting a cut of her music
Yeah,
royalties.
Adele.
Oh, okay, yeah, I am remembering the right one then. Yeah, sorry,
Yeah.
I thought I was getting her mixed up with like the Jeff Bezos one or something. But Jeff Bezos was the one who was paying her, so.
Yeah, she got.
Hmm.
I think if I remember rightly, she's given $5 or $6 billion away.
Mm.
$5 or $6 billion. So, and I think Adele's being forced to pay. I think ballpark is tens of billions. So, but obviously women paying alimony is a fairly rare thing. And in America, they've got started calling it manamony.
Yeah, that's interesting that they make up a slightly mocking term, although I guess it depends how you take it, who is being mocked there. It could be the woman who's being mocked, but then again, that kind of says a lot either way. Who the barb is aimed at.
To be honest with you, I think they're aiming it at men, and it's being done in such a way as to say the man is less of a man because his ex-wife is having to pay him money.
Yeah, that sounds about right, to be honest. That's really just the whole thing. It's like the CEO's wife has the privilege because she married into his money and his work, and he's giving her all this money just because he loves her and he enjoys having her around, and then they don't see that woman as being privileged in any way. They feel in a sense that she worked for that privilege by marrying him, but they didn't really, did they? They just kind of married into it. I mean, this is why women go after rich men. It's because they have a lot of money and resources and stuff like that, and that's very attractive to women. It reminds me of. Sorry.
I was going to say I won't tell you where my trucker's brain just went with that one. It wasn't
where your what went with that one?
My truck driver's brain.
Oh, right.
You know what us truckers are like. We're not exactly known for being sophisticated thinkers.
No comment. I've never found you to be particularly stupid, but sorry, that came out very backhanded. I didn't mean.
Believe me, I've been called far worse than that, so I wouldn't worry about.
No. I mean, I enjoy talking to you. I think you're an intelligent person. I mean, I don't think you're stupid just because you drive a truck.
It's just the way truck drivers are seen is, oh, you must be stupid if all you do all day is drive a truck around.
Well, a lot of very intelligent people end up in menial labor and stuff like that. Usually men. But, yeah. Oh, hey, Hidorino. We're just talking about male privilege and how it's a complete fib. Do you have any experience of people talking about that? Maybe doesn't have a mic. All right then. Yeah, I mean, I was just going to say, M-Painter, I've been reading through the Dresden Files, and he's kind of fairly blue pill, but at the same time, every so often he says things like, well, at one point he was making a love potion just for the hell of it, and one of the ingredients was $100 bill. And there's this line about there being nothing sexier than money to women, basically. And it was quite interesting little observation that, like, you have these incredibly rich men, and women do go after these very, very rich men, and they do like seek them out and try to marry them, and nobody really sees that as a privilege when they succeed. They it's the CEO is seen as privileged, but the woman who marries him isn't seen as privileged, even though the CEO works for his money, and the woman who married him basically just lives in his house. Yeah.
I'm assuming you know who Peter Crouch is, don't you?
Who is, sorry?
Peter Crouch.
The name's familiar. I'm sorry, I disassociate names with people.
Right. He's an ex-England footballer, and he's actually married to a model. And they've been married for donkey's years. But he was asked once in an interview, what would he be if he wasn't a footballer? And obviously, because he's played internationally, he's very, very well off. And he turned around and said, a virgin.
Yeah.
And I don't know how would you sort of define that comment? Is that a lack of self-worth? Is that a large amount of self-awareness, perhaps?
I think it's probably a mix of loads of different things.
And what does it say about his wife? I genuinely believe that she is in love with him as a person. But would she have looked at him twice if he wasn't a rich footballer?
Hard to really say, but it was probably what attracted her to him. I mean, women do find resources attractive. It's like men go for a pretty girl, and women go for a pretty wallet a lot of the time. It's objectification is what it is. It's
of course, the ultimate example we'd probably say we've seen the last few years is Melania Trump. Would she honestly have looked at Donald Trump twice if he wasn't a billionaire?
I really don't know anything about her, but maybe not. Hard to say. I mean, I don't know when she met him.
But she's a former model, bearing in mind he's been married a couple of times before.
Mm.
I think they haven't been married that long, I don't think.
Really?
Maybe 10 years or so. So, I mean, he was already phenomenally wealthy even then.
Mm. Yeah, that does sound like a classic sort of sugar daddy sort of thing. One of the things I was thinking about just now is that it's amazing how often you see in the newspaper something about a footballer in the middle of a divorce to like a woman who was probably only married to him for a couple of years, if that. Like footballers, celebrity divorces, that sort of thing. It's like they marry a woman they love, and she walks off with half his money, basically. Is a pretty cynical way of looking at it, but it does seem to be what happens a lot of the time. I mean, obviously, sometimes it's because highly strung model is, put together with like highly strung actor, and they clash because two prima donnas is a nuclear war, basically.
Well, you only have to look at Johnny Depp and Amber Heard, don't you, really?
Oh, yeah. Following Amber Heard and Johnny Depp, that's literally the only piece of gossip that has actually ever been intriguing to me. Because if you look at her love life, it is a series of torrid and violent affairs. There's that girlfriend she had, who she beat. There's Elon Musk, who was seen in public with her, and him looking very, very unhappy, and great big bruise on the side of his face, possibly a black eye. It's hard to tell from the picture. But yeah, very, very red face. Didn't look happy at all. And it's interesting that none of these people, except for Johnny Depp, has really come out and talked about how abusive she is. Like where's Elon Musk standing up and saying, yeah, she hit me in the face and that's why we're not together anymore? I mean, it's very interesting. I mean, obviously Elon could have gotten hit in the face by a bit of rocket or something, but you know, I think it's more likely that Amber hit him in the face, because it's just like this bruise in the middle of his cheek, which was very, very similar to one she painted on herself. You know, the famous wandering bruise. And I do find it is quite interesting how readily the papers swallow her story about being abused, when the only person ever seen in public with credible injuries are her love interests, and the only time she's been seen in public with any kind of injury, it's moved around her face, and it hasn't looked real, because it was basically just a blotch of brown. And I'm pretty sure you know that when like you have quite fair skin and you get a bruise on it, it doesn't look pretty. It doesn't look like it was powdered on there. And it's not just brown, it's also got like yellow bits and other discoloration around it.
Yeah, most of us, or most people that have been online or what have you, that or have spoken about Johnny Depp Amber Heard situation, very few people actually believe her outside of the judges.
The judges who go to parties at her house.
Yeah, exactly. You know, another male privilege, not being believed as a victim of domestic violence.
Very much so.
And even she pointed it out. You won't be believed.
Yeah. You know, after that libel trial, when that corrupt judge who works for News Corp, who own the Sun, declared that the Sun was innocent, the papers crowing about it, like especially the Sun, you're like saying, you know, the domestic abuser, you know, justice has been done to the domestic abuser and stuff like that, and like not even the famous can escape. It was physically painful for me. I couldn't read more than a few lines of it.
It's chilling.
Yeah. Like, that's what propaganda looks like.
Yes.
Very much so. Yeah.
It's a scary thing. It really is.
Yeah. It's like when China says that they're educating the Rohingya or whatever they're... Rohingya? Oh, I can't pronounce it. It's like when China says they're educating them and they're freeing them from terrorist ideologies, but what they're really doing is sterilizing them and keeping them in camps.
Yeah. Or indoctrinating them into thinking the way they want them to think.
Yeah.
Now, that's all the press are essentially doing, is telling people the way they should think.
Yeah.
And I found a video on YouTube. I'll have to try and find it again. Called An Open Letter to Amber Heard. And it was from a woman who was a victim of domestic violence. And she basically turned around and said, "Sorry, Amber, I don't believe you."
Well, that is very interesting.
And I firmly believe that Johnny Depp is the real victim here. He's got so much evidence that he is the victim of domestic abuse and domestic violence.
And what's she got?
I think something else has come out as well recently. There's another piece of audio that's recently been released.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I think it's like their final phone call or something. I haven't actually listened to it.
It sounds pretty juicy.
Well, it's from what I could tell from the comments on YouTube, she was just gaslighting him the whole time. And he, from what I can gather from the comments, he was a bit of a lovesick puppy, as it were. And she was just being an absolute, what to him. So you have to be you have to be a complete moron or completely corrupt as one of these judges to believe Amber's story.
Yeah. Well, I found it quite interesting how readily men who are in these abusive relationships believe their abuser. Like, there seems to be some sort of switch in a man's head that abusive women know how to twiddle. I mean, have you ever seen that video about the woman who hired a hitman on her husband and then lied to him over the phone, even though he'd seen video of her hiring the guy, and she said she was 1,000% sure she wanted to go through with it, and she wanted him dead and stuff like this.
Yeah, and the hitman turned out to be a police officer. It was a sting operation. Yeah, I've heard the full audio of that.
Did you hear the audio with commentary? Because there was a woman who did some commentary on it that was very, very interesting, talking about how she kept trying to get him to come over to her so that she could, quote unquote, explain things. But what she really meant was come closer so that I can fall into your arms and be physically weak and engage your instinct to protect me.
Yeah. It's gaslighting at its most base.
Yeah.
And you're right in what you're saying, that abusive women do know how to push buttons. And I'm not going to go into my story for the umpteenth time, but I've got personal experience of it.
Yeah, I do understand.
My buttons always revolved around the children.
Yeah.
So, she knew if she pressed that particular button, it would get the reaction that she wanted. And even now, I get little bits of trouble from her. But for quite some time, I got no contact. About a month or 6 weeks. Going absolutely no contact, and that certainly calmed a lot of stuff down.
Yeah, I think it sounds like you're grey rocking her. That sounded wrong. It sounds a lot like you.
What does that mean?
It means not giving them any attention, because what she wants is attention. So, if she abuses you, she says, something horrible to you, all you say is, Okay. All right. I see. And you just give them no emotion. You give them nothing.
Yeah.
The optimum one is to just nod at them and walk away, or shrug and walk away. Shrugging's
Yeah.
probably better. But the idea is that you give them no purchase on you, and you don't let them affect you, because what they want is to affect you and to make you emotionally vulnerable and hurt you, because that's
Yeah.
how they control you. And yeah, it's an interesting method. Some of the people here have argued against it, but I'm a fan of it, because it's even though I've had historically a lot of trouble actually doing it, it is very effective from what I've heard.
And we had a conversation a couple of weeks ago. She was crying to me about this other bloke and what have you, and I just went, I really don't care. You know,
Yeah,
what are you expecting me to say to you? I don't care. You know, you've burnt me so many times now that I just don't give a shit. So crack on with your life. I'll crack on with mine. Just put the phone down and go.
That's a good way of dealing with it. Something cool. Could you mute your mic when you're not talking, please? We've got a lot of background noise there.
I'll just mute mine for a second.
Yeah, it's. I mean that sounds like the optimum way to deal with her. I mean, it is really sad that you can't see your children. I honestly don't think that she should probably be looking after those children if she's like that. I mean, she might be incredibly two-faced and end up being like okay with the kids but abusive to you. But honestly, if somebody's abusive to somebody else, then the chances are they're abusive to a lot more people. So, I mean, if you could somehow prove that she was abusing them, then, that might have some sway with the courts, perhaps.
Yeah, well, I do see the children, but the biggest problem I've got with it is my job.
Yeah.
For the 5th Saturday in a row, I won't be getting home. I've got 40 minutes left on a 9-hour drive and a 13-hour day. So,
yeah, that sounds pretty rough. Distant father and abusive mother.
Yeah.
It's not your fault, obviously.
No, for the last 2 days, I've done 1,000 miles driving.
Oof. Oh, damn, that's a lot of. Eesh.
I went. Well, how well do you know the UK, human?
Fairly
well.
well.
You live here. So if I said to you about an hour west of Felixstowe on the A12, do you know roughly where that is?
No, sorry.
Right. Well, Felixstowe is sort of on the east coast. It's just north of London and Essex, but sort of south of Norwich. So.
Oh, well, I know roughly where that is. Yeah.
Yeah. Right. So on Wednesday, I went from there across to Newport in South Wales, and then up to Durham. Obviously, she's County
really
Durham.
That
was just under 500 miles. And then yesterday, I went from Durham up to Newcastle, back to Newport, and then just north of Birmingham. So that was
a lot.
Yeah, that was another 500-mile drive. So, and today I've been up to from just north of Birmingham up to Hartlepool, across to Halifax. I'm now going to get just south of Birmingham for the night.
So you're sleeping in the truck?
Yes. Yeah.
Mm.
I'm exercising my male privilege.
Huh.
You know, for 48 hours worked in 3 days with
Hey.
29 hours driving, an average of 5 hours sleep a night. Okay.
And I'd
Urinating
guess
in a
a lot of
bush.
that money going to the abusive wife.
No, not anymore.
Oh,
Not
good.
anymore. She gets her child maintenance payments and that's it.
All right, so some of your money's still going to her.
But it has to. So I've entered into a formal agreement with the Majesty's government, so
Mm.
I have to give her the money. But in the first 2 years after we separated, she had over £18,000 out of me.
Oh, that's insane. That's like some people don't make that much working just like minimum wage jobs. It's
No. But obviously, in the job I'm in, many different parts of it you can go into. And I got a job delivering chemicals sort of around the south of England. So I was getting paid up to £800 a week. And on one occasion, she actually had that off me. And I
the
had to
whole
borrow
thing.
money off my late. Yeah. I had to borrow money off my late mum so I could buy fuel for myself for the week.
That's crazy. How did she get the whole thing off you?
How do women normally do it?
Ah, okay.
Emotional manipulation, pushing the right buttons. I haven't got the money for this, and I haven't got the money for that. The kids need this, and the kids need that, and the kids need something else. I'm stuck. I don't know what to do.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I ended up giving her all my wages one week, and that was just insane.
Yeah. I've spoken to a lot of abused men, and one thing that seems to come through from a lot of activism on alimony as well is if she asks for something and she's begging you for money and things like that, the best route is if you actually, not to give in. But the second best route is to buy the things she wants to get for the children and make sure they can't be returned by her anyway.
Yeah.
And if you show up at the house with those things, be very interesting to see her reaction. Because a lot of the time it's, suddenly dismissive, and she didn't actually want the money for that. She actually wanted the money to go and do her nails and her hair and, make a car payment and stuff like that and get things that she wants for herself.
Yeah, I don't know if she's doing that or not, but she's got this bloke in America who sent her an awful lot of money as well. So as I've now explained to her, if she wants something, she can go crying to him, not me.
Yeah.
I've again using my male privilege and told her I'm not interested. Don't want to hear it.
Be fun to get hold of that guy and sit you two down together and see what he thinks of her afterwards.
The funny thing is, we've spoken recently.
Oh, really?
On the phone. I sent him a message to say, right, it's been 5.5, 6 years or whatever it is. I think it's high time you and I had a chat, young man. And he actually rang me all the way from New Jersey, and he tried the charming American thing on me, and it's just like, mate, that's not going to work. And I basically, because the thing is, I found out he was talking to my daughter every day of the week.
Really?
And I just turned around and said, if you want to have contact with my daughter, you've got to dump the girlfriend that you've got, and you have to move over to America and honour the promises you made 5 years ago. And I haven't heard from him since.
Mm.
And I actually wonder if he's never actually been confronted by an angry ex-husband or ex-boyfriend of one of the women that he's been playing.
Yeah, that's certainly not a nice thing to have shoved up in your face.
No.
I'm getting tell me if this is accurate or not, but I'm getting a picture of a very well-off, sort of upper middle class man with a lot of money and a lot of girlfriends who don't meet each other.
Yes.
Yeah.
His parents are wealthy bankers in New York City. I say his adoptive parents because he's Guatemalan by birth. So he was adopted out of an orphanage.
That's certainly a rags to riches story.
Yeah, well,
I guess it went to his head a little bit.
I don't know. He himself is a cybersecurity expert.
Alright. That's certainly a good job if you can get one.
Yes, it is. So obviously you can see why the ex-wife fell for him. Me being cynical a bit there. Yeah, exactly. But the thing is, they've had a very tempestuous relationship as well.
By tempestuous, do you mean in the fun sense or the not so fun sense?
In the not fun sense.
Yeah, well, abusers will abuse, and they will abuse whoever is around them. It's just their go-to reaction.
Yeah, I think with them it's 6 of one and half a dozen of the other. I really do.
And abusers will often find other abusers.
Yeah. I've seen an awful lot of the messages and stuff between them. Like, the other thing he will do is he'll talk to her for a couple of months. Then they'll have some kind of argument, and then they'll just stop talking, and he'll block her. I'm fairly convinced that she's a raving narcissist, and I'm not 100% unsure that he isn't one either.
Yeah.
I think
they deserve each other.
Yeah, that's pretty much what I've said, to be honest with you, Human. Pretty much what I've said. But I don't want him having contact with my children if he's not going to honour the promises he made 5 years ago.
Yeah, it is I mean, obviously, I don't know what the relationship's like there, but it does seem quite interesting that specifically the daughter he's speaking to every week. Did you say?
It was every day.
Every day?
Yeah. She was sending him photographs of schoolwork and other bits and pieces that she's been doing in the lockdown that I've never seen. You know? And I speak to both children every day myself. And I ring them up in the morning before school. I ring them in the afternoon after school. And then I ring them up to say goodnight just before I go to bed.
I'm glad you have at least that much contact. I honestly thought you had way less.
I don't spend as much time with them as I did. But obviously, being under full lockdown, as Wales is, I'm technically speaking not allowed to go and see them. But I drive
Sounds
up there on a
frustrating.
Saturday and Sunday just to go and say hello and, give them both a hug, make sure they're okay, and sort of that's that, really.
Yeah, that sounds very depressing, to be honest. How many children do you have again? It's 2, 3, wasn't it?
Two.
2. Yeah, and is the other one a boy?
Yeah, teenager.
All right. And the guy in America doesn't phone him every day, does he?
No, I think my son would probably tell him to do one in no uncertain terms.
That's fair enough. Yeah. I'm just wondering if it's this is the only connection to the family he's been able to establish, or if it's yeah. I mean, obviously, I don't want to just blankly suspect the guy, but it's just I mean, obviously, I don't even know what he looks like, so I can't judge the guy. I'm hoping it's just a point of view if he wanted to have a father-son sort of relationship with the kids, and that was the only one who was willing to have that with him. But
he's very much got his claws into my ex-wife,
yeah,
to the point where she's willing to destroy her personal friendships over him.
woof. All right, that's yeah.
She's got a very very nice Spanish friend who lives in Tennessee, and they had a massive falling out because my ex accused this woman in Tennessee of beginning an online relationship with the guy in New Jersey.
Really?
Yeah, and this woman's married, got 2 children, and she's just not interested. She actually can't stand the guy in New Jersey.
Abusers do try to isolate people from their friends.
I don't know if it's him pulling that particular string or if it's her just pushing the self-destruct button.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, they can do it to themselves as well. It's
yeah. And she's not this friend in Tennessee is not the first person my ex has done it to, and it's incredibly it's really self-destructive, to be honest. Really self-destructive.
Yeah, she sounds an awful lot like that wife of that friend I told you about ages ago. The wife who beat him over the head with a steel vacuum cleaner pipe in front of 2 policemen.
Christ.
If you remember him. Yeah. Well, they didn't do anything.
Excuse my French, I know we're on stream, but
yeah.
That
they did ask if he wanted to. They did ask if he wanted to press charges, but only afterwards.
Right. Did he say no? I take it.
Oh, of course he did.
I mean, have they got children?
Yeah, they had some children. I don't remember if they were grown at that point or not, but I think they were still with her at that point, and she was poisoning them against him and stuff like that.
Yeah, so she was engaging in parental alienation, and he didn't want to damage the kids.
Yeah.
By getting their mum put inside, which he would have had every right to do, and I completely sympathise.
It probably would have solved the situation if, or at least helped the situation if he had put her in. But well, it's very hard to get abused men to press charges.
It is when there's kids involved.
Oh yeah,
I
it's
can tell
especially
you that
difficult
from
with the
experience.
kids.
Yeah, and if the kids are young,
Yeah,
because you don't know if the kids are going to turn against you, which isn't beyond the realms of possibility, especially with younger children.
yeah.
It's a bit
Well,
different when they're older.
I found it's generally difficult to get men to press charges, regardless of if there's children there or not. But children are definitely a major reason why they don't.
Oh yeah,
Mm. It is very, very difficult to get people to realize that a lot of the reason that the stats are the way they are with domestic abuse, even though they you survey men and it turns out it's 50-50. When you look at the crime stats, it's mostly men abusing mostly women, simply because they all have kids, or they're all puppy dog in love with her, or they they just don't want to hurt her, even though she wants to hurt him, and they've got this protective urge not to not to throw her away into the prison. And
yeah.
uh,
Unfortunately, part of that is down to the training of the police.
it also has a lot to do with men not being able to understand that they've been abused, because men tend to compartmentalize it, and they tend not to label it abuse. They tend to view it as her being angry at him rather than her being abusive, because they think that abuse only happens to women and stuff like that.
Yeah.
It's a whole long sad story, to be honest, that I've seen an awful lot of times.
Yeah. Not only seen it, I've experienced it myself, but and I've seen it in close personal friends, or one in particular. He didn't understand what was going on and what was being done to him until essentially a mirror was held up to him. Yeah, and basically until a mirror was held up, and this is what you've been putting up with.
Yeah, it is. Putting a mirror up is a good way of doing it if you can pull it off, although it can be quite difficult even then.
Yeah. This is a person I've known for a quarter of a century, so if I couldn't get through to him, nobody was going to.
Yeah, well, I'm glad you did get through to him.
Unfortunately, it's proving it.
Yeah, there's that.
We could say men have the privilege of upper body strength, so are more likely to do damage, whereas women tend to be a bit more sneaky about it, and they'll do enough to hurt you, but they won't necessarily do enough to leave a mark, unless they start to use weapons, which obviously we know is a common trick.
Very much so. Surprise, weapons, subterfuge. Those are basically how they do it. Emotional abuse. Sneak up behind them, slap their hands over their ears to make their ears ring. Hit punch them in the side of the head. Poison their food. Yeah. It's there's a whole range of different tricks that they use.
Yeah, very much so. Very much so. It's the end of another day. The whole time I've been on, as I say, the whole time I've been on with you, obviously I've been driving, and I've literally just parked it for the night.
It did sound an awful lot like you were doing something vehicle related.
Yeah.
Well, at least there's that.
Yeah, I'll sort myself out in a bit then, and put the oven on, have some dinner, like you do.
Have you
Got
got a
about an hour and a
microwave
half.
in there?
I've got a little electric oven
Really?
that just plugs in. Yeah, just plugs into the 24-volt socket.
Hmm.
It takes about an hour to heat up a ready meal.
Quite nice though.
Yeah,
That's
I mean, you know, I get paid what I get paid for going here, there, and everywhere around the country. It's quite pleasant.
hmm.
I don't know if this counts as a male privilege or not, to be honest, doing this job.
I don't think. Yeah.
I mean, it's one of the 10 most dangerous jobs outside of the armed forces or the emergency services.
Hmm.
It's got, I think, highest divorce rates. Some of the highest divorce rates in the country.
I can
The
imagine.
mortality rates aren't great
Yeah.
because of your general health.
That and falling asleep at the wheel, I should imagine.
Driver fatigue is an issue, but you know, you're told if you start getting tired, pull the hell over.
Hmm.
It's not unheard of for drivers to doze off momentarily. And at 44 ton doing 55 mile an hour, you're going to do an awful lot of damage
Yeah.
because there is so much momentum there.
Hmm.
It's not the speed that's the problem; it's the momentum. So that's something people need to understand about these things. They don't build up speed very quickly, but once they do, they're incredibly difficult to stop.
Yeah. I bet. I mean, you've got like 4 or 5 metric tons of crap behind you, and that's not even counting the weight of the vehicle itself.
Today, I've got 27.5 ton behind
Ooh,
me.
27.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The tractor unit on its own is about 7.5 ton. The trailer, about the same, maybe up to about 10 ton or 10.5 ton.
Yeah.
So, I've got all-round disc brakes, ABS, retarder on the gearbox, plus exhaust brake on the tractor unit, and then you've got disc brakes with ABS on the trailer.
Mm.
But when you're going down a 16% gradient, I've come out of this afternoon at 44 tons, you don't want to slow down. It really doesn't. It just wants to keep going and going and going. So your brakes get slightly warm then.
Yeah.
And a few years back when I was just starting out my career, there was 1 week where we lost more lorry drivers than an average week on the front line of Afghanistan.
Yeah, that sounds an awful lot.
Well, if you take the number of weeks the Afghanistan war officially lasted, by the official number of combat deaths, I think it's about one a week, or just over one a week it works out at.
Mm.
And there was 1 week a few years ago now where I think we lost about 8 drivers in various ways. I think there was a couple of heart attacks and accidents.
Probably a stroke as well, yeah.
Yeah, the odd stroke in there.
Mm.
I mean, there was one guy, he went through a barrier down into an underpass,
Hey.
and the trailer come down on top of him.
Wow.
There's another guy I heard of was taking a 1.5 ton pallet off the back of his truck, and it crushed him to death. Was there, general accidents and things.
Yeah.
Somebody not concentrating and going into the back of another truck and trailer.
Mm.
That does happen. They were actually, the BBC were following a traffic police unit, 1 year, and they were dealing with one accident, and then a couple of miles back in the queue, an Arctic did exactly what I just described, went straight into the back of another truck.
Mm.
At completely unabated speed.
Yeah, that's a person sandwich there.
It was so bad that there was nothing left of the cab.
Yeah, I should imagine there wasn't much left for the driver either.
No. Unfortunately, that's just a hose pipe job.
Yeah.
I don't know if you've ever seen videos from places like China where they're hauling steel coils, and instead of putting them in a well or wedging them in place, they leave them free and don't bother strapping them. So the vehicle stops at a set of traffic lights, and the coil just rolls straight down the end of the trailer and flattens the cab and rolls out onto the road.
Yeah, I haven't seen videos like that. I've seen reels going off the back of trucks, and that's terrifying.
Yeah, you don't want to be behind it when that happens.
No.
But I could tell you so many stories that you wouldn't want to go out in a car ever again, let alone be anywhere near a wagon.
Yeah. I bet.
When I trained for my hazardous goods license, they told us a story about a tanker carrying oleum, which is about the strongest form of acid you get. And it rolled over. The driver was trapped in the cab, but was able to get to safety. And an off-duty nurse went to help him, and the tanker had split open. All they found of her was her wedding ring and a piece of her shin bone.
Yeesh.
And that stuff's out on the road, ladies and gents.
Yeah. Yeah, people are pretty scared of the tankers full of petrol, but it's the other stuff that's often worse. It's like even a tanker full of milk can kill you. So
milk is interesting because it's hazardous to marine life. Milk.
Oh, really?
Yep. So technically speaking, it should be carried under dangerous goods rules, because if it gets into the water supply, it robs all the oxygen out of the water.
That's pretty bad if you're a fish, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. A full petrol tanker isn't a problem. You could drop a lit match into one and it wouldn't do anything. An empty fuel tanker, on the other hand, is a problem. Particularly if it hasn't been vented.
Yeah, I
Because
can imagine.
it's the fuel vapors then that are the issue.
Yeah. That is what explodes.
Yeah.
Then you've got
Yep.
puddles of stuff in the bottom that will blast out and cover things. And
Yeah, you get what's known as a bleed. And if you've ever seen a tanker going up, you'll know what one of them is. There was really famous video footage of a methanol fire on a tanker. And eventually it bleed and it just left a load of metal shards where the tanker used to be.
yeah.
And then obviously the problem with methanol is you can't see the flames. They're invisible to the naked eye.
That is interesting. You could just walk right into that.
Yeah. So if you ever watch drag racing or IndyCar, if you suddenly see them throwing water everywhere, it means they've got a methanol fire. Because it's obviously methanol is alcohol based.
As a writer, that really intrigues me, to be honest.
Why is that?
The methanol fire idea, it being invisible. It's it's an intriguing writing idea. But
do you write those kind of stories? Do you?
Well, it's I've always had a fascination for crime stories and things like that. So I find the idea of an invisible fire quite an interesting thing that you could fit into a story.
Yeah. Well, there we are then.
Yeah.
Just don't say you got the idea from me. You got it from watching IndyCar. Yeah. I potentially could still get into trouble.
Sorry?
I could still get into trouble for it. Because
Wait for telling me about it.
Yeah, I'm still registered as having a dangerous goods license, although it's now lapsed.
Alright.
And that comes with its own set of demands. That license. I had to be trained in vehicle firefighting, emergency first aid, including CPR, scene management. I had to know what could go near what in terms of the chemicals. I had to know how to deal with them if there was an issue or a spillage. And it's quite interesting actually when you do have a chemical spill when you call the fire brigade. Because all hell breaks loose. Place I used to work for, we delivered a lot of stuff for swimming pools. That was sort of our bread and butter.
Chlorine. Yeah.
Well, the interesting thing, it's not just chlorine that goes into swimming pool water.
Really?
It's a chlorine and acid mix.
Oh, really? Oh, that sounds even worse.
Well, they put very small amounts of acid in there to help dilute the chlorine.
Yeah. I should imagine that probably stops it from liberating from the water as well.
Because the chlorine that we deliver, it was only what, 15% strength,
Mm.
would melt a bath towel in a couple of minutes.
Yeah. Yeah.
So if you imagine if that got
mm,
on your skin.
yeah.
I'm going to have to go through my old photographs on Google and see if I can find the picture of me in full HAZ gear.
That'd be fun.
Doing it. You know these big bloody masks that big perspex masks people are walking
Yeah.
around in at the moment? I had to wear one of them, rubber gauntlets, rubber trousers, a full rubber baby grow, and everything else. Face mask, a lot.
Mm. That wasn't while driving, was it?
No.
I was going to say that'd be awful in summer. But
It was
yeah, I
awful in the
didn't think it
summer.
was. Yeah.
Awful in the summer anyway. Because what we used to get was like a 1,000 litre tank of chlorine, and you'd have to pump it into the swimming pool's chlorine tank, and that would take anything up to an hour to do, depending on how far away and what have you that you were. And you had to stay there in full gear until it finished pumping. So if you can imagine wearing that stuff for an hour in 30 odd degree heat, you were a bit damp when you took it back off again.
Oh, that sounds horrible. Yeah.
I lost a lot of weight that summer, I have to say. I did lose a hell of a lot of weight.
Mm. Really, I thought the
But
sweating weight off thing was a myth. But
well, you know, you lose a lot of water weight, don't you? So the
yeah.
other big thing was dehydration. They
Yeah,
used
but
to
you wouldn't be able to drink on the when you're pumping, would you?
no. They used to give us at the start of like every week a big case of water, and then you used to put that in the cab fridge, keep it cool. So when you finish pumping, obviously you'd take your gear off, get in the cab and have a cold drink and put the air conditioner on, try and dry out and cool down.
Yeah.
But, you know, it's a man's privilege to do that kind of dangerous, horrific work. Amongst other other fun and games used to have in that kind of job. I got a punch in the face once and the key stolen out the truck. And I got threatened on 2 or 3 occasions.
Really? I wouldn't
Yeah.
have thought that people would try and steal a truck full of chlorine.
Do you know what is produced when you mix a high enough quantity of chlorine and acid?
Oh, no, but I'm getting a sudden feeling that it's drug related.
No,
No?
worse.
Worse?
Yeah, think what Saddam Hussein had in the first Gulf War that he used.
Oh, we're talking nerve gas, aren't we?
Chlorine gas, yeah, otherwise known as mustard gas. So it becomes a chemical weapon. And when you also consider we were carrying flammable liquids like acetone and things, you've got the makings of a chemical bomb. So I'm actually kind of surprised that more people haven't done it, to be quite honest with you.
Yeah, that's a fair point.
But this was a road rage incident. I'd started to move across the left-hand lane of the road I was on. The car decided to try and jump up the inside of us, and the gap suddenly disappeared. And when the old bill turned up, they turned around and said, "You should have just driven." And to hell with the consequences, because it becomes fear for life because of what you're carrying.
It's interesting they'd take that tack. I
Yeah.
can understand it. Yeah. I mean, normally the police take the tack that you shouldn't hurt the criminal and stuff like that. But...
Well, because of what we were carrying, obviously chemical, caustic potash and all this sort of stuff, they turned around and said it could have been a potential hijacking. You don't know. So if you get in that situation again, you just drive.
Yeah.
And to hell with the damage you do. And it's another part of the course when you do it. They say you actually get given a placard in the truck. And basically, if somebody tries to pull you over, put the placard up in the window. It says, "I'm not stopping until I can ascertain your identity."
All right.
And then what you do, you just drive to the nearest police station. You notify them that you're coming and that you want officers to meet you outside.
Yeah. I should imagine by
Basically.
that point, most road ragers would give up.
Well, yeah, if someone's trying to hijack the lorry, they probably would end up giving up because they realise that it's not going to happen. I mean, the other thing is we would never. You were told never ever give out details of your route to anyone. So like, I wouldn't speak to a family member and tell them where I'm going that day, for example, because you don't know if somebody's listening. Getting a little bit conspiracy theory now, but yeah, you never ever give away details of where you're going. You try to avoid stopping out overnight if you can. If you have to go to somewhere safe. So there's none of this parking in a lay-by stuff. You had to park in services. And you had to go in and notify the services what you were carrying. If you in fact still were carrying anything.
Yeah. I can see why you've stopped doing that.
Yeah. I thought it'd be quite good to have that particular qualification, but it's too much hassle. And the other thing it required me to do by law was if I come across an accident scene, I had to stop as a first responder.
That sounds an awful lot like it can make the accident a whole lot worse. If you got rear-ended or something by another truck and there was a chemical spill.
There's always that potential. But it was basically, so like, you had somebody trapped, there was a vehicle on fire. Because we had 3 fire extinguishers on board, we could obviously put the vehicle fire out. We had different bits and pieces on board, which meant we could have got into a vehicle if necessary. So life hammers and all that sort of bump we used to carry. So yeah, if I came across an accident scene, I was required by law to stop as a first responder. And I don't fancy that. I really don't.
Yeah.
I will stop if I need to, but I don't fancy having to deal with somebody who's in that bad away that they need CPR.
Yeah. I wouldn't want to either, because then if they do die, then it's your fault. At least, you might feel like it's your fault, even if
Yeah,
there's no chance.
yeah,
I mean, CPR
it's
doesn't have a great chance of working anyway, so.
it's better than not doing it.
Yeah.
But they've also changed the way CPR works now.
Yeah. You don't breathe in their mouth anymore.
No, you just give chest compressions.
Yeah.
You can do both if you feel it's necessary, but they don't necessarily want you to do it.
Yeah.
And obviously, even when the emergency services arrive, they might ask you to continue giving CPR.
Yeah, I guess it does depend on how many of them turn up.
Yeah. Yeah. So I'm kind of glad I don't have that qualification anymore.
Yeah.
There's a couple of people know I had it, and they're like, "Oh, the company will put you through to renew it." No, thanks. I don't want it. I've said maybe one day if I go out on the petrol tankers, but not other than that, I don't want it. Because petrol tankers are the best paid in the business.
Really? Not the hazardous acid tankers?
No, the petrol tankers are the best paid in the business.
I guess because there's an awful lot of money in it, whereas there's not so much money in swimming pool stuff.
Yeah, I mean, what the average petrol tanker's on £50,000-60,000 a year.
Mm.
And I'm on about 36.
That's certainly not very much compared to the petrol tankers.
No, I mean, many people, when I tell them what I earn, go, "Well, that's a lot of money." And then you start to run through the responsibilities and the things you've got to do.
Mm.
You know.
And the mind-numbing tedium of staring at the M20 all day.
To be honest with you, I don't notice that anymore. I'm pretty certain if I said to you, right, you've got to go from Felixstowe to Newport to Durham, by the time you hit Reading on the run to Newport, you'd be bored out your brains.
Yeah.
Whereas for me, it's just, I don't notice it. And I think Wednesday night, I was very, very shocked at how far I'd actually driven. I was very shocked.
I guess you go into a sort of a trance-like state or something and start thinking about other things. It becomes automatic.
Yeah. Are you old enough to remember Jeremy Clarkson after his first stint on Top Gear to when the new series of Top Gear started?
I'm not clear on what you mean exactly. And do you mean
he stopped doing Top Gear in the late 90s, very early 2000s.
Okay.
And he had about a 2 to 3 year gap, and then he started what we knew as Top Gear up until a few years ago, when he punched that producer.
Oh, you mean the original Top Gear, which was literally just a car program and didn't have the jokes and things?
Yeah.
I do know of it, but I've never seen it.
Right. Well, in between those two stints he did other stuff on TV. And one of them, he interviewed a psychologist, and he was talking about Michael Schumacher, who was the big Formula One name at the time, and Colin McRae. Right? And they were doing like reaction tests on them and stuff. And your basic reaction time is actually the same as someone like Michael Schumacher or Colin McRae.
That's
Okay, but
interesting.
because they've been doing this one thing for such a long time, they actually don't take up any conscious brain capacity in order to do it.
Oh,
So obviously,
really?
with Colin McRae, he didn't use his driving was actually subconscious, so it allowed him to concentrate more on what the co-driver was telling him.
That's very
So
interesting.
yeah, and Sterling Moss, when he won Emilia Emilia in 1955, right? He apparently wasn't able to hear his co-driver, and they had rudimentary microphone and headsets because his brain had tuned that out almost like automatically. So the only thing Sterling Moss was reacting to was visual cues. So the co-driver would put his hand out into Sterling Moss's peripheral vision and use hand signals to tell him what was coming up next.
That's quite interesting. Since
Um,
there's other people on here now, we should probably move over onto more
yeah,
men's rights related stuff.
yeah, cool.
Okay. Now, does anyone want to raise a subject that they're interested in? Anything that's new or news related? Anything like that?
No, not really. I'm good.
Okay. Oh, by the way, how is Epstein doing at the moment? What's his health like?
He's dead.
Oh, well, that's bad for him, I guess. All right then. Moving on from that.
The question is, did he commit suicide or did somebody kill him?
I'm pretty sure that lots of people made sure he committed suicide quite passionately. Yeah, if you get my drift. Yeah, there's.
I can't comment on that. Last time I commented on that, the feds came after me.
Well, anyway, so we have been talking about men being used as test subjects for medical experimentation. We have been talking about male privilege. We could move on to talking about how to combat people who think men are privileged and discuss like tactics or something like that if people would like, or we can do something else if anyone has any preferences.
I don't have anything specific.
No, okay then. Okay, how do people feel about tactics regarding combating this whole male privilege thing? Because obviously we know the stats, we know it's not true, but getting the message through to people is difficult because
Very
it feels
difficult.
like one of
Yeah, it's very difficult. I agree. I mean, I haven't tried to. I just because there really isn't any chances for me to do so. But it is very difficult to get that message across.
I mean, obviously we do come up with stats and things like that.
One thing I sometimes bring up is the white feather movement.
Yeah, that's a good one. That was some very privileged ladies sending some underprivileged boys off to die in the war.
Privileged do you have to be as a woman in that situation to go around calling men cowards and pinning a white feather on them?
They did what now?
There's...
What exactly did they do? Sorry, I never heard of the white feather movement.
Oh boy, you're in for a treat.
Yeah, all right. Hold on. I need to go for a second. I need to check on my dogs. Hold on.
Okay, sure.
Do you want to take this one, human, or shall I?
Oh, I don't mind. But I think we should probably wait for him to get back because I'm not sure if he can hear us or not. But yeah, male privilege is pretty much a description of upper class
All right.
privilege.
All right. Sorry about that.
All right, dog's
But
doing
anyway,
all
the
right.
white feather movement. Huh?
Dog's doing all right.
Oh yeah, they're doing fine. I just heard my
Oh,
dog messing around
cool.
with something out there. Turns out it's the ash collection tray under a grill.
Yeah, that sounds pretty dog-like.
She just keeps on taking it out. But anyway, yes, white feather movement.
You should see if you can get her to clean it or something.
No.
All right. No, just joking. But yeah, white feather movement. Okay. During World War One and probably World War Two as well, but the suffragettes completely suspended all activism, and instead they went out and campaigned on behalf of the government to get young men to sign up to fight in this totally pointless war. So they basically, their strategy was, if you can mute your mic when you're not talking, sorry, we're kind of,
Yeah, sorry about
yeah, sorry, it's just a bit of background noise. But yeah, what they would do is they would go out and they would, if they saw a young man who wasn't in uniform, they would pin a white feather on his chest and call him a coward and group shame him. The typical image of this is actually quite poetic in that it's like almost a romantic gesture. You'll see it shown as on TV, but in real life it was actually more like a bunch of really bitchy Karens going up to some young man, cornering him on the bus, pointing the finger at him, calling him a coward for not serving his country and not protecting the women folk. And like they'll try and pin a white feather on him, or like just poke it into his clothing somewhere, or just throw a handful of them at him, and like they'll try and single him out. From it's basically classic public shaming tactics, and it got so bad that the War Office had to make badges for active service personnel who were on leave, so they didn't get targeted by the white feather movement. Because we had stories like injured men coming back from the war were given white feathers. A man who was on a way to a dinner in his honor and was going to get a medal got a white feather. And I think he actually slapped one of the girls for doing that, and good on him, because honestly, it's a really awful thing to do anyway. But then we also have them giving it to the little boys. So they'd go up to little boys and they would pressure them into joining up. One boy, 14 years old, was pressured into joining up. He went to the front. They found out his true age. He was sent back. He was cornered by the white feather movement again. They, did the whole peer pressure thing. He signed up again, went to the front, and died there. So it's a pretty horrific thing. And to add insult to injury, feminists nowadays will often say, "Oh, well, if you're not strong enough, if you're, how could somebody be pressured into something like that with just like a white feather? That's kind of pathetic and stuff like that."
I think I get it. I think I get that. And everyone, those people who did that were a bunch of fucking assholes.
Yeah, they were. And they were. It was a whole national campaign as well. So if you were being given a white feather, it was a massive mark of public shame. You were singled out.
Where did this take place?
All across England, all across the UK. Just Google the white feather movement. It's a horrifying story, and this is young men who couldn't even vote being done to them
All right.
by the
Yeah. This.
suffragettes and others.
Yeah. So I'm pretty sure it did happen during World War One, because in 1918 that's when women in the
Yeah.
United Kingdom were allowed to vote,
Yeah, men in
and
the United
the
Kingdom weren't
suffragettes
allowed.
did.
It was in during World War One. Yeah, I'm not sure if it resurfaced during World War Two or not, but I don't think it resurfaced in an official capacity. But that doesn't mean it didn't resurface in an unofficial capacity. So I don't want to speculate on World War Two without doing the research on it. But World War One was where it was centered around. And honestly, if we had another war like that and there was another draft, there probably would be a lot more shaming tactics for, to get young men to join up to the army and go off to fight and die for whatever pointless piece of
Yeah, I
bullshit
did
they
look it
come up
up.
with.
I did look this up. Let's see. It does say that it was brief during World War Two.
Yeah. Yeah, that does sound, yeah, that's probably why I was remembering it being like World War Two related. But yeah, it was a horrible campaign. The posters as well, and like it was, you know, it's a shame we don't have video footage of it because it would be a bit of a life lesson for and a bit of a red pill thing, I think, to see it now. You know,
It probably would be.
around
It probably would be.
Mm. But yeah, it's they a lot of it was them dangling women's safety out there. Like they were saying that the women would be, they implied that the women would be hurt if the men didn't go off to war, which was obviously bullshit because the whole of World War One was just like alliance after alliance piling on different sides, and it was a huge mess of a war that shouldn't have even been a war to begin with. Yeah.
All right. So what was our next topic?
Well, let's see. I mean, we could still keep going on male privilege because honestly, everything related to this is, information that can tear down that idea. I think the most profound piece of information that can tear that down are all the studies we have on the website now, which show that both men and women
You
care
link that
about men
website.
less. Sorry?
You link that website in voice discussion.
Oh yeah, sure, I'll put it in there.
Yeah.
But like, there's research now that says that men and women care about men less than they do care about women, and women care about women even more than men care about women.
Which is why the feminist movement has become what it has.
Oh yes, the ironic thing is that the feminist movement would never have been successful if it wasn't for female privilege and stuff like this, and people bending over backwards to look after the interests of women and ignoring men. It's very ironic that they can then turn around and say that men are privileged.
It's gynocentrism 101.
Oh yeah, yeah. The specific tag on the site that you just need to click on is the Empathy Gap, Epstein's health updates. Okay, it's getting on to being pretty late now. Do you guys want to knock this in and maybe come back to it next Friday when there's perhaps more people about?
Well, depends on what time next Friday.
Sorry,
I'm
what?
going to be actually depends on what time next Friday.
Oh, what country are you in?
United States.
We start at 5 p.m. GMT, which is 2 hours ago.
Oh, all right. Then I'm not going to be able to make it next Friday. I'm actually going to be in school. Yeah,
Well,
we start going actually to 4 days a week next week. So.
well, my condolences, I guess, on the school, but let's see. I mean, well, we can't really go later, to be honest, but maybe we can find some other day that we can do this on, where maybe we can get more American people in on the chat.
Probably the best days if you want to get more American people on the chat would probably be weekends.
Yeah. Well, the issue with that is that we didn't want to be in the rush where everyone's doing Discord chats on a Saturday and a Sunday night.
Yeah, that is a good point.
Yeah. I mean, Friday night was kind of a compromise for us.
Yeah.
We did also consider Monday night, but I mean, I guess we could try it over the weekend and see if anyone's like you know, what the audio quality is like. I mean, it's not like we've
whatever you want to do. I mean, I may or may not. It's always iffy for me, so I just happened to find this today. It's whatever you want to do. So.
But it's nice hearing from you. Okay then. Sorry, Painter?
I was going to say maybe just move things a little bit later on the Friday.
Yeah, I'm not keen on that because well, personally not keen on it because when I start the chat, I'm already kind of mentally exhausted. So going for a couple of hours after that is okay for me. But by the time 7 o'clock rolls around, I'm generally halfway asleep. So it's earlier would actually be a lot easier for me. But obviously, it's very difficult to schedule worldwide talks, especially when we've got like England and America involved, and you know, people in Australia sometimes popping in. All right then. Well, I guess if nobody else wants to, I mean, if you guys want to talk, that's fine. But I'll be cutting the stream and stuff.
Anyway, I have stuff to do, so.
Okay then. Well, talk to you all later, and we will have a word about maybe doing this on Sunday night or something, or maybe Saturday night.
Either one of those nights would work.
Okay then. We'll talk about Saturday night talks instead of Friday night because
I just gotta take into account that time zone too. But yeah, we'll see. We'll see.
All
see
right,
what time we have.
All right,
Thank you.
Okay. Good night, everyone.
Thank you.